Sorry I had to end my last post so abruptly, but whenever I think about what happened, I can't even believe it, let alone write about it. After the initial shock wore off, Tyler called the police and told them what we had stumbled upon. They warned us not to touch anything. Too late for Tyler, whose prints were clearly on the bowl. I noticed he had touched the wet blood after he viciously wiped the residue on his jeans. Neither of us were brave enough to approach the body to verify that it was Kate. I think the postponement gave us hope that just maybe we could be mistaken. We decided to head back to the library to meet up with the cops there. They would most likely need us to lead them back to the crime scene. 4 squad cars were pulling into the library parking lot as we emerged from the woods. They searched Kate's car, which we had also already touched and rummaged through, so they had to take both of our fingerprints. We were each taken to a separate squad car and then asked a million questions. You would have thought that we were the suspects. Finally, they asked us to show them the way to the crime scene in the woods. I was already so aggravated that they had wasted so much time that I felt like telling them to go find it themselves. The crime scene unit stopped to snap pictures of the blood trail leading into the woods. They continued to take more photos the entire way there. The detective kept eyeing Tyler and me, watching our demeanor to see if we looked nervous or guilty. Of course I was nervous. I was about to find out if the murdered girl was my best friend or not. As we approached the crime scene, the detective told us to stay back. He said that he didn't want us to contaminate anything. A short while later, he came over with a picture on his cell phone that he'd taken of the victim's face. My heart was beating out of my chest, and my palms instantly began to sweat. I grabbed the phone from him and identified the female as Kate. Tyler was overcome with emotion. He had to be escorted back to the library. I was more angry than sad. Who would do this to her? I thought to myself. I sat down on a nearby stump and watched them collect evidence, but I had to turn around because my eyes kept shifting back to Kate's mutilated body. As I was searching through my phone, I saw that news of Kate's death had already hit social media. Tyler must have posted something. No one else knew, except for the two of us. A tap on my shoulder startled me and caused me to jump. The detective apologized and explained to me that he thought Kate must have put up a hell of a fight. He said that they discovered a taser on the ground near her body. I informed him that Kate didn't own a taser that I was aware of. He described it to me as pink and full of fur, and then I instantly knew that it belonged to me. It was the taser that I had dropped at the library the night before, when I had been attacked. She must have found it and picked it up for protection when she came looking for me. I was feeling guiltier by the second. Apparently, I was beginning to look guiltier as well, because the detective didn't seem to think that there was a rational explanation as to why my taser would be located near her body, unless I was there. I explained to him what had happened to me the night before, how I was attacked, but he wasn't trying to hear any of it. I think he didn't believe me just because I hadn't reported the incident to the police. I told him to check with the people who worked at the restaurant that I ran into, and he said he'd look into it. Look, you're wasting your time if you think I had anything to do with this, I remember telling him. What about her boyfriend? How was their relationship? He asked me. I don't know why, but I felt a little offended. Tyler would never hurt Kate. He just proposed to her, I told the detective with an attitude. Aren't they kind of young for that? He retorted. Are we done here, sir? I asked. I was definitely done with him and his accusatory remarks. He told me that we were done for now, but to expect to hear from him real soon. I headed back to the library to catch a ride with Tyler, but he was already gone. One of the officers offered to drive me home, but I respectfully declined and began to walk toward the bus stop. It was deserted, so I gladly claimed a seat on the bench to wait. As I waited, I thought to myself how unbelievable this all was. It was like an episode of my favorite television show, The First 48. How could this be happening to me? The bus arrived and I boarded and found a seat in the back, far away from everyone. When I got off of the bus at the corner of my street, I stopped and realized that Kate wouldn't be home waiting for me. She would never be there again. I started to cry, and passers-by were just staring at me as if I was crazy. I called Tyler, and when he picked up, I cried, "I can't go back there." "Go back where? To the woods?" he questioned. "Why would you have to go back there?" Oh my God, sometimes guys can just be so dumb, I thought to myself. "No, our apartment," I told him. "It's too hard." He offered to let me stay with him and his 2 male roommates, but that would have just been really weird for me. Not to mention the detective would probably think that we had something going on. I thanked him and told him that I was going to go home for a few days. I also called the detective and left him a message so that he didn't think I skipped town. I headed upstairs to Kate and I's apartment and packed as quickly as I could. I glanced at the picture on my nightstand as I walked out of my bedroom. It was a photo of me and Kate at Christmas the year before. We were both wearing our ugly Christmas sweaters and grinning from ear to ear. I grabbed it and threw it into my bag on top of my clothes. I debated whether to call my parents and tell them what happened, or to just wait until I got there to tell them. I decided to wait. I didn't want to be in tears the whole 4-hour train ride there. I took a cab to the train station, purchased my ticket, and then sat down to wait. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, and before I knew it, my train was boarding. When I arrived in Augusta, I gave Mom a call and asked if she could come pick me up from the train station. She said she was occupied at the moment, but that she would send Dad to come get me. She asked why I hadn't told them that I was coming home for a visit, and I told her that it was a long story, but I'd tell them everything once I got there. Then she asked me if I was okay, and I answered, no, not really. While I was waiting for my dad, I received a call from the detective stating that he'd gotten my message that I was going out of town. He told me not to go anywhere else besides there without letting him know. "Am I a suspect?" I asked. He responded with, "Everyone's a suspect." I started to get a creepy feeling. It reminded me of that time at the library when I felt like I was being watched. I glanced around the station and recognized a man who'd been on the bus earlier, lurking in a corner all alone. He didn't seem to be watching me, but it was a pretty big coincidence that I'd seen him on the bus earlier, and now we'd boarded the same train and got off here. I reached into my purse, and my hand glided across my pocket knife. That was my only weapon I had left. My taser and pepper spray had been used in my most recent predicament. I'd have to make sure to tell Dad that I needed some new ones, and thank him too, since they did come in handy. He finally pulled up, and I glanced around once more to make sure that I wasn't being followed. Maybe I was just being paranoid because of everything I'd gone through lately. I didn't see the man anywhere. He must have left. "Hey, Pumpkin, what a nice surprise. When Mom told me you were in town, I left work early to come see you," Dad said to me. I gave him a hug and a kiss, and then asked if we could stop at the nearest fast food place because I was starving. We headed to McDonald's, and I ordered enough food for about 5 people. "You know me and your mom don't eat that stuff," Dad said. "This is for me," I told him with a giggle. What could I say? I had barely eaten in the last 2 days, and I was famished. Actually, come to think of it, I'd been picking out ever since I was attacked the first time at the bar a few months ago. Maybe it was from all of the stress. I mean, I hadn't gained any weight, so I wasn't too worried about it. I began gobbling down a double pounder with cheese. Then I drenched my fries in a mound of ketchup and took a slurp of my vanilla milkshake with each bite. Dad stared at me like I was from another planet. "What?" I asked. He just shook his head, kept driving, and didn't utter a word. When we got to the house, I darted inside and ran into Mom's arms. I needed one of her everything is going to be alright hugs. The 3 of us settled down on the couch, and I disclosed everything that had happened over the past few days. They were shocked, especially when they heard about Kate. Mom and I both started to cry while Dad cradled us in his arms. My brother walked in and then immediately turned around and walked back out of the living room. He probably thought I was going through some type of girl problems, and he didn't care to hear about them. I told them that I just needed to get away for a few days, and they said that I could stay for as long as I wanted. Dad said he would pay for me to get a new apartment, and then he headed to the store to purchase me a new taser and some more pepper spray. Mom got up to prepare dinner, and then I got up from the couch and headed to the door. She asked me where I thought I was going, and I told her that I just needed to go for a walk and clear my head. She agreed to let me go, but told me not to leave the neighborhood. "I'm worried about you," she said, and I could see the worry in her eyes. It was a cool night, so I grabbed my brother's hoodie from the coat closet and then started to walk down the block. It felt great to get some fresh air and not be running for my life at the same time. A gust of wind blew my bangs into my eyes. I thought I heard something behind me, so I whirled around and came face to face with our neighbor and her dog. "Oh, Mrs. Watson, you startled me," I exclaimed. "Sorry, dear. Nice to see you, sweetie," she replied. I continued my walk around the block and ran into my dad returning from the store. He demanded that I take the taser and pepper spray right away and then toss them at me through the open car window. I told him I'd meet him back at the house in 10 minutes for dinner. I admired the scenery in the neighborhood that I'd grown up in. A lot had changed since I'd moved away 4 years ago for college. There were new houses I hadn't seen before, occupied by new families I'd never met. As I turned the corner onto my block, I spotted out of the corner of my eye someone following me. The only thing I could tell was that it was a man. I couldn't see his face. Why did I have to have such bad luck when it came to creepy guys and being followed? Sweat began to pour from my brow into my eyes, and my heart was beating out of my chest. Instantly, I reached into my purse for my pocket knife, grabbed it, and gripped it tightly. Then I swiftly ran to the backyard of an abandoned house. I cautiously peeked around the corner of the house and saw the man rush past, trying to catch up with me. I waited about 5 minutes, and then, assuming the coast was clear, snuck to the front of the house. But instantly, a pair of strong hands grabbed me tightly by the shoulders and screamed, "What are you doing?" Then I felt that all too familiar warm and wet sensation on my hand. I jerked it back, heard a loud gasp, and then a dark shadow collapsed to the ground. I pulled out my cell phone and turned on my camera to shine some light. My hand and the knife were covered in blood. The dark shadow belonged to the same man from the bus and train station who'd been following me. "What have you done?" he mumbled, right before he stopped breathing. Serves him right, I immediately thought. But why was he following me in the first place? My heart sank when I caught sight of the shiny gold badge attached to the front of his belt. Instantly, I realized that the detective must have sent him to keep an eye on me. I was already suspected in one murder that I had nothing to do with. I couldn't get caught up in another, even though I was the actual murderer. My eyes scanned the area around me, frantically searching for somewhere to dump the body. The street seemed to be deserted, so I quickly gripped his hands and dug into the nearest manhole cover. I lifted it, and it made a loud bang when I lost my grip and accidentally dropped it. I panicked and pushed him inside along with his badge. Then I quietly replaced the cover and sprinted away. A light flicked on in a nearby window, so I bolted to the backyard of the nearest house and waited a few minutes. I couldn't afford to get caught in the act by any looky-loos. My cell phone began to ring. It was Mom, probably wondering why I hadn't made it back yet. I checked my clothes thoroughly for blood splatter and noticed none, but my hand and wrist was covered in it. I tugged my brother's hoodie over my head and vigorously wiped away the evidence, then tossed it into the nearest trash can that I passed. Heading back to the sidewalk, I called Mom and told her I was right down the street. I tried my best not to seem paranoid, but it was pretty hard. I hoped they wouldn't notice that I returned without the hoodie that I left with. I hid the pocket knife in my purse. It could come in handy at a later time, I thought to myself. I just had to clean and disinfect it as soon as possible. Quietly, I entered my parents' house and snuck to the bathroom to wash up. The smell of Mom's infamous meatloaf hit me in the face as I headed to the kitchen. As I settled down at the dining room table, Everyone's eyes were on me. My heart was racing as I asked, "What?" "Your face," Mom responded. "What about my face?" I questioned, thinking I had forgotten a speck of blood. "I haven't seen you smile that big since you were a little girl," she replied. "Did you get good news from the police?" she asked. Smile? She must be mistaken. How could I be smiling after what I just done? I'm terrified. But then I saw it, my reflection in the glass of the china cabinet, staring back at me. And there was no mistake. I had a huge grin plastered on my face. "Hey, what happened that's got you so happy?" Mom asked again. "I was just thinking about Kate. Remember last year when she tried karaoke for the first time?" Everyone at the table smiled. Kate had been horrible at it, but no one could tell her that. She thought she was the next Beyoncé. That reply seemed to suffice because Mom picked up the bowl of mashed potatoes and placed a small scoop on her plate. Then she passed it along to Dad and picked up the bowl of gravy next. As I reached for the plate of buttermilk biscuits, Dad asked me, "When do you think you'll go back to school?" "In a few days. I don't want to get too far behind," I replied. "I'm going to start looking for a new apartment tomorrow," I stated sadly. Mom tried to cheer me up by changing the subject, but my phone started to vibrate and cut her off. I checked the caller ID and saw that it was Tyler, so I excused myself from the table and went out to the front porch. As soon as I picked up, I could tell he was extremely angry. "What the hell did you tell the police?" he demanded to know. "What are you talking about? I told them the truth, which was actually nothing because I don't know what happened to Kate," I yelled back through the phone. He explained to me that the detective contacted him and basically accused him of having something to do with Kate's death. "Relax," I told him. "Don't tell me to relax," he snapped. I was just about to hang up. I didn't want to say anything that I would regret. We were both going through a hard time right now and feeling a bunch of different emotions. But before I could, he said something to me that I had already thought about to myself on occasion. "Everyone gets hurt when you're around. First Luke, now Kate." Immediately I thought about the man who had just lost his life tonight because of me. I felt justified before talking to Tyler, but now I was having second thoughts. Yeah, the man had been following me, but did he actually deserve to die? Thoughts began to run rampantly through my mind. Should I call the police and just explain to them what happened? But then I'd have to explain how he ended up in the manhole and why I tried to cover it up. Then they'd really think I had something to do with Kate's murder. After all, I am a murderer. And most murderers do kill more than once. My stomach began to growl. Although I'd finished my entire order from McDonald's only a few hours ago, I was starving. What's going on with me? I thought to myself. This can't be normal. I went back inside and scarfed down my meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and 3 biscuits. I left the Brussels sprouts on my plate because no matter how hungry I was, I could never resort to eating those. I'd hated them since I was a kid, and Mom knew that, which is why she placed them on my plate while I was outside answering the phone call from Tyler. "Really, Mom?" I said, annoyed, glancing from the sprouts to her. Mom was caught off guard. "It was a joke. I thought you'd think it was funny," she replied. "Yeah, well, it's not," I said with an obvious attitude. She didn't reply. Her and Dad just looked at each other surprised. "Look, I think we all just need a good night's sleep. We've had a long day," he said as he started clearing the table and then headed towards the kitchen. When the two of us were alone, Mom apologized. I took a second helping of meatloaf and another biscuit before Dad finished clearing the table. "Save room for dessert. I made peach cobbler," Mom told me with a smile. We ate dessert in silence, and then Mom and Dad headed to the living room to watch the news. I took a shower and went straight to bed. But I slept horrible that night. All I could do was toss and turn. I couldn't get the police officer I had killed off of my mind. My emotions were all over the place. I felt sad one minute and then angry the next. My temper was always so placid before, but recently I seemed to be snapping at everyone, not to mention my increased appetite. I'd Googled these symptoms and the internet diagnosed me as being pregnant, but I knew that was impossible. I was a nervous wreck the next few days, but the police never came knocking at my parents' door to haul me away. After staying a week, Mom and Dad accompanied me back to school and helped me move into my new apartment. After I got settled, a detective contacted me and asked if I could come down to the station to answer some more questions. I agreed, and when I arrived, I was led straight to an interrogation room. It was cold and cramped in there. I immediately felt like a criminal. It took a while for the detective to come in. "Have you found anything yet?" I instantly asked, referring to Kate's murder. "No," he replied. "But that's not what I want to talk to you about. Where is Detective Miller?" he asked me in an accusatory tone. Subscribe for a new story Mondays, Wednesdays, and don't forget Saturdays. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.